Gary Watt, Wood Products Extension Specialist at North Carolina State University. This is a video narrated slideshow for small sawmill businesses discussing equipment. What I'd like to do today is to have a short discussion about the various pieces of sawmill equipment that we see here in the U.S. and Canada revolving around our local industry, taking logs and making lumber products out of it. The 6 Small Sawmill Business Workshops was a grant by the U.S. Forest Service that had 6 grant workshops in the northern U.S. stretching from Iowa to New Hampshire. These workshops came in 3 flavors, and those flavors were small sawmill business, live edge slab business, and dry kill business. And here on my title page, it is kind of interesting with these photos I have. On the left, I've got, I believe that's a photograph from Williamsburg showing what we would call a pit saw, though this one's up in the air. And the upper guy is the experienced sawyer, and the apprentice is there below, probably a tourist. The next one going over is the Lucas swing blade sawmill. And you can see this one actually has a chain bar that's cutting a wide edge slab, which has bark on both edges. The Lucas, I'm sorry, this is a Peterson mill. That's a Peterson mill. The upper right is the Wood Miser double post wide machine that is also cutting a thick slab. This machine is not, as it's configured here, mobile. It's set on the ground. It looks like it's at a show. And down at the bottom is we've got a gentleman who has taken a ladder and made a homemade carriage above for his Alaska chainsaw mill. This grant is from the U.S. Forest Service. The purpose is for education and promotion of better businesses. These 6 workshops attracted 280 persons and was very well received. My contact information there is on the left by email, and I do have a website for my work as a wood product specialist. We do at NC State, the Wood Education and Resource Center, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture does not discriminate for any reason to any individual or group. If anybody has a complaint, you can bring it up to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Forest Service, Wood Education and Resource Center of Princeton, West Virginia, and North Carolina State University. When we look at sawmill equipment, this list here on the left is pretty much will encompass most of the machinery that you see, other than conveyors and log decks and debarkers and such, that we see on small sawmills. In the center is a scrag mill. They are extremely productive for small logs. They come in 2 flavors. The one you see here is a circle mill that also comes in a band version, and typically they have vertical saws, and it's 2 saws set a certain distance, and they really work well for products like cants for making pallets. That's the really place they shine, because it's a feed through. You go through it twice and you've got a rectangular cant of some description. The resaws are, like on the right is a vertical resaw. There's also a horizontal version, and they're to take the cants and other thick boards and make them thinner. And like I mentioned, they do come in vertical and horizontal versions. Some of the horizontal versions, they'll come in a series, so you may take a 6-inch can at the start and you go through 3 saws, and then you get 4 pieces of wood. We also have gang saws, which typically work off of their circle blades with an arbor, where we take a cant and we convert it into boards in one pass. And then board edgers is what we use right off the sawmill to take the edges off either one side or the other, and they can have extra blades that does intermediate ribs, and these are movable. Typically 1 movable blade and 1 fixed blade is the way most of them are configured. And then we have trim saws that we use to cut the lumber to the length we want, or we can remove defects at the end. Our sawmill equipment we've got several equipment manufacturers that are pretty popular, and most of the operators of small sawmills have one or more of these manufacturers' pieces of equipment. In the band mill, Wood-Mizer is the best known and largest seller, but there's also companies like Norwood, Easy Boardwalk, Timber King, Hudson, Baker. There's multiple people doing the band mills. There's probably more options on band mills than there are any others. The swing blade circular mills is like Peterson, Lucas, and Mobile. And typically the starter version of those will produce 6-inch boards. The next larger blade will do 8, and you can do 10. Is common the way they configure. And they're swing blades because they can either cut vertical or horizontal, and as you work the top of the log down, you're producing boards by going vertical cut, horizontal cut, and back and forth until you cut the log down to the ground. The fixed blade circular is our traditional mills. Mostly had carbide insert teeth, and companies like Frigg, Edmiston, and Foley made these kinds of fixed blade circular saws. Typically they would have a 3-person crew, and that's one of the reasons that people mostly have moved on to band mills now, is we can have band mills with one operator. If we look at various power options, we've got really four options. Gas engines is the most popular, and for engines that are smaller than the mid 20 horsepower range, gas engines dominate. Diesel engines really come into play once you get into the mid 20s for horsepower. Electric motors are what we see in stationary locations, and they tend to be larger. Most of your small mills don't use electric, but a lot of the large ones do. And then water power. That was our first power option for sawmills, and there's still a few of those around. They're always a joy to see, and even less available these days are the steam engines, and it's always great to go to an antique show and see a steam engine pulling a sawmill. So on the right you can see we have the horizontal standard mill. This is a double post. All 3 of these are double post machines made by different manufacturers. If we want to improve our productivity when we're looking at running our small sawmills, what we're talking about is our output per hour, like board feet per hour. And board feet, remember, is just a volume measurement. There's 12 board feet in a cubic foot, and a board foot is just a square foot that's 1 inch thick. So there's nothing rocket science about figuring board footage. If you can figure cubic footage, you multiply it by 12, or you can use all kinds of formulas to calculate it, but it's really just a square foot that's 1 inch thick. Material handling equipment is really where we can drive a lot of productivity. You can see the photograph here on the lower right where there's a log deck, and then the operator of the sawmill can concentrate on doing the sawing. And the log decks are really important if you're trying to grow your productivity, because it puts in a queue the next logs to come, and the longer that deck is, the better. The longest one I've seen on a small sawmill was like 60 feet, and this guy could take a whole truckload of wood and put it on that one deck, and he got it at an auction, so he got a good deal on it, and he always liked it long because he didn't have to load it that often. But when we do our material handling, we got to think of all our material. We have boards, we've got sawdust, we've got slabs, we got bark, whatever we have. If we can automate it with some material handling equipment, it really helps. If we can get the boards that need to be edged carried over to the edger without picking them up and carrying them, that helps out. So there has to be a flow going the logs in, doing the sawing, then dealing with all the products that come off the log. If we saw timbers, cants, and cross ties, dead roller conveyor, power conveyor works really great. We don't want to be picking those heavy cants, timbers, and cross ties up. It is possible that you can stick while you're sawing. A two-person crew, it works quite well, and if you have material handling equipment like forklifts, it's really a good way. Usually the person that's helping has enough time to stick it while we're sawing. And always remember, we use only dry wood for sticks. We don't ever, never, never, never use a green stick to stick wood. Um, Board returns on sawmills are popular with some of the larger mills. That way the operator doesn't necessarily have to walk down the mill during sawing and can stand in one place and have the boards drawn back. Uh, we do have power feeding on sawmills, so we don't have to push the head rigs through. Some of the entry level machines do manually push them through. Some of them have hand cranks and some of them just have pushing. The swing blade saws typically are pushed, other than maybe mobile milling. The Lucas and Petersons are, for the most part, they're pushed, but I know the Peterson does have an option for a power feed. But the log deck is the one universal device that really helps for anybody that's in a stationary situation. When we look at our productivity, we're looking at output per time, like board feet per hour is one of the most common measures of productivity. And we have to go back and look at, well, what are your work methods? How are you sawing logs? What is the sawing pattern? We know if we're grade sawing, we're going to do a lot of releases and spin the cants around, whereas live sawing, we just go right through and we don't have to flip it but really once or twice to be able to do our sawing. So the products we make a big difference on productivity. If we're quarter sawing, we're going to be slow because we're making a lot of small boards, lots of passes through. If we're doing live edge saw, we're doing the less. We're doing large products like cross ties and timbers, that'll be faster. And it's really based it's material methods, it's the equipment we have, and just what are we trying to accomplish? What are the log sizes? If we're sawing logs that are always over 20 inches, our output per hour will be high. The logs per hour might be slow as compared to doing small logs. The scrag mill is the fastest mill on small logs that we can use. Equipment maintenance is real important. All of our engines and motors require attention. The gas and diesels require more than electrics, but electrics take attention too. You have to be concerned about spare parts, having your tools at hand, having your lubricants, and so forth. You do want to keep your fuels clean, and it's real easy when you're going to the local store and getting gas in cans to get dirt and trash somewhere along the way. So look at your funnels with some screens and filters to try to keep them clean. You certainly want to keep your manuals and purchase information, certainly the phone number of your company that you need spare parts from. And something you might do is, if you can find some similar dead machines at low prices, you may have a parts machine sitting off to the side as a convenience. Sometimes your replacement parts are hard to get, and having a dead machine may help. The blades is a real critical part, whether they're circle blades or band blades. I had a mill from 90 to 95, and at that time the option was only to sharpen and set your own blades. On the upper right is the standard setter, or one of the versions of a setter, and the bottom is showing a grinder. So what you have is, if you want to do your own blades, you certainly can do that. You can find from your manufacturer of your mill, typically offers a blade package where you can do your own grinding, your own setting. It's really popular now to do the outsourcing of the sharpening. The Wood-Mizer company has multiple locations where they or their partners do blades. A lot of local saw shops do blades, so you can pick out what you want to do there. There's a great variety of the types of metal that's in these blades, and it's a real challenge for the blade manufacturers, because the blades have to be soft enough to run around a wheel over and over again, but the tip needs to be hard. So sometimes we use hardened teeth on our saw blades. There's different options there, and certainly there's a difference in the manufacturer. So a lot of our small sawmill businesses will experiment. They'll buy a box from one company or another box from the next one, or a different type, trying to get the blades. One of the interesting things I did once when I was doing my mill operations was I kept up with the footage on a box of blades, and the box of blades had 10 or 8 back in those days, and I ended up averaging 1,250 board feet per blade out of that box of blades. And that was a useful number because it gave me some indication of what I should what I should include in my cost of sawing, because blades is an important aspect of that. And over the years, the blades have gotten better, so we can cut more than we used to in the old days. We do have value-added equipment, and a lot of our small sawmill operations set up wood shops, and they make some simple products like tables and benches and wood planters and garden things that help in the garden, like compost containers and things. But rip saws, resaws, gang saws are useful for making some of these products. You can make stakes for the surveyors and farmers. They would include saws and tenoners for that. You can have a chop saw, is pretty affordable, a planer. Stepping up, you can get into molders, which have at least 3 to 4 sides, maybe 5 heads on them to make moldings and things. There are dowel machines. Tenoners work on one end or both ends of a board to do something to it, and you use the tenons for assembly. Board machines put holes in the boards to make things. If you make a bunch of parts that go together and make something, we call that dimension parts. And you can make furniture parts like for chairs and tables and things. In a production run, you might make 25 tables or 25 chairs or whatever it is, and you can sell those as a kit to somebody else, or you could use it for yourself. A big use of wood from our small sawmills is packaging products like skids and like pallets. Every community has some kind of a manufacturer that needs a specialty pallet, and there can be good money in that using just ordinary wood or structural type industrial wood. One of the real important things that I advise to everybody is to put in a shed. And the reason you want a shed is to get your equipment out of the weather, whether it's your tractors or your mill or even your wood, your inventory. This gentleman has created a really nice shed out of lumber that he sawed, and probably acquired the post somewhere from maybe a utility company that changed it out, and that's really a first-class looking shed. And remember, when you have a shed, make sure the water drains out of and not into it. So as you add gravel and other things, maybe if you're sawing under the shed, it builds up. But just make sure the water does run off, and if you need gutters or some flashing, you want to do it. Pole sheds are this example. You can have enclosed buildings. You can have lumber drying and storage sheds. If you're in dairy country, there's a lot of dairy farms that's gone out of business in recent years that have great sheds. They've got great entry roads. They got electricity. You may be able to lease a dairy building and have a really nice facility to do your sawing. A lot of our people get into dry kilns, and I'm just going to briefly mention here. I mentioned them in other videos too. But the business argument is to convert your green lumber to dry lumber, which has higher prices, higher value, and it also gives you the ability to store. So if you look at the upper right, this happens to be a dehumidification kiln, and you can see it's a front door kiln where the person puts the wood in, and they have some fans overhead, and there's a hinge with a baffle. So on the right, that becomes the chamber, and the fans will blow air through a stack of lumber there. So that's a fairly new building. It looks like it's going to be tight, and that's critical for dehumidification drying. The lower left is a modular kill by Kill Direct with a fold-up door, so it's front loading. That's the kind of kill that comes in on a trailer, and the user has a pad down and has the utilities brought to it. The center bottom is a solar kill. That's pretty much the standard. It's been here in the U.S. Virginia Tech worked on this during the 70s and does a workshop for it during the summer. And it's a good design. I'm told that about $2,500 worth of cost will make one of those. And their drying time depends on the time of year and the type of wood and its condition. A lot of variables there, but usually anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. You can dry wood if it's air dried, and green wood takes longer, thicker wood takes longer. On the right is the iDry vacuum kill, and it's been a sort of a revolution in recent years. That the iDry company has developed some new technology that allows them to use a partial vacuum to help dry wood. It really works great on thick woods like thick maple green, which is something like a 3-inch in 3 to 4 weeks, which is remarkable compared to normal drying. But you can see this person has put a roof over it, which is good because this is a high value piece of equipment. But these are affordable for the small sawmill operation only on higher value woods. You wouldn't really use this for pallet woods. It just wouldn't make sense. But certainly slabs, it's a natural fit for slabs and other high value woods. When you look at your adding the kill, you have to figure out if that is going to help you with the wholesale market or the retail market or where you want to go. You can do either one, but it will definitely enlarge the number of potential buyers you have if you have dry wood, and it is more valuable. If you look at the various equipment, we have the solar kills, we got hot water and steam dry kills, dehumidification kills, vacuum kills, and that comes in cooperation with our air drying yards, our shed drying. Shed drying is superior to air drying out in the yard because you got more protection for the elements of the sun and the roof, sun and the water coming in, so the roof is a good thing. So what this video here has talked about is the various pieces of equipment and touching on dry kills, that options that you have, and pretty much covered most of what anybody would want to do as you convert your logs into these value-added products. So if I can do anything to help you, let me know. This series is like 6 of these videos that I put together coming out of the 6 workshops in the northern US. This series created 3 business guides that are available on my website for each of those workshops, which was the small business workshop, the live edge workshop, and the dry kill workshop. Appreciate everybody watching this today.